What's up, future shred lords? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. This one came to me when I was hanging out with a buddy. We're talking about guitar. He saw my video. He's mocking me really about the whole AI playing to it and stuff like that. He's like, have you ever considered doing the rhythm stuff to the AI? So I was like, here's a great example of how you can use this repulsive technology, if you will, but to your advantage, because you can take something that's relatively bland and make it into something interesting, but more importantly, test your skill set, right? Like the AI music, in my opinion, is a step above most guitar backing tracks. I know the guitar backing track guys are going to be like, go fuck yourself. But I said what I said, and I'm not taking it back. So they play in more challenging keys. There's more variation in tempo, and it forces you to think outside the box and stuff like that. So take from that what you will. But the point here is to show you the basic rhythm ideas, and it's about setting goals, playing on time, having an understanding of the basic music sort of environment that you're going to be working in, like the key, the scales and stuff like that, 3 notes per string, the, diatonic chord sequences, all this theoretical BS that you see endlessly puked onto the internet. It actually matters to a certain degree, but I mean, we're taking it to an extreme now because just everybody wants to make content. It's not as difficult as you think, right? So you see me starting off the entire thing, I'm playing down here in C sharp, right? So the first question is where does that chord come from? Where does it fit into the puzzle, if you will, with respect to the major key that I'm playing in when this backing track is playing? Because it's in a key. That's how music works. There's 12 of them, right? So in this case, I figured it out. It's the 4 chord. So if I said C sharp is the 4, what is the 1 chord? Right? So you're like, okay, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Oh, so it's got to be, yeah. In this case, A flat major. So, yeah, or G sharp major. I don't know which one it is. I think it's A flat major. That might make that D flat major instead of C sharp major because we're working in a flat key now. But I'm not going to overcomplicate it. You saw me just basically be, if that's the 4, then I go up a whole step, right? And then another whole step to get to 5, and then 6, and another whole step, 7, and then a half step to get to the root. And I just did it using 3 notes per string, but starting on the low B string in my case, so on and so forth. But that's how I figured out the key. And then I knew that that was the 4 chord moving to the 1 chord, right? Which is exactly what I do. And that makes that the 4 chord going to the... Which one's that? Well, if this is the 1 chord, that makes that the 6 chord, right? The relative minor with the pentatonic scale. So that right there is probably 99% of people's biggest issue. When a music thing is thrown at you, in this case, this little rhythm idea, you do not set the parameters to be like, this is, where I'm working so that you can actually operate within those bounds. When it's like you're looking at space and whatnot, it's just too massive to contemplate. But if you just zoom in onto one object in space, then all of a sudden it's something that you can work with and then work outwards from there when you can handle it. You know what I mean? So I think people miss that, and this sort of constraining of the, your thought process to be like, what key am I actually playing in? Instead of just being like, oh, look, I'm just going to play those two, the 2nd fret on the B string and the 4th fret on the E string, and make power chords. No, actually figure out the nature and the relationship of those, because then you're like, that's a plagal cadence. Right? Just using, power chords or perfect 5th intervals. All this theory stuff starts to actually matter when you know what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you can use that in useful ways, because obviously the complementary chord to this one is going to be the triad, this obvious Hendrix thing, right? And then where does that come from? oh, okay, it comes from 3 notes per string. I don't care what the chord extension is. I just basically see everything as the 3 notes per string. Right, so if I'm moving up, there's those ones because it's all part of these 9 notes there, right? So I think people should probably wait or reorient your goals to be like, just master the sequence of notes first and their position. You're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Right? Then if you want chords, 9, right? And so on and so forth. But you know what I mean? Build up in a logical sort of order rather than try to take everything on at once and master the theory and the technique and the playing, the rhythm skills necessary and all the rest of that. And that's the next one. You'll see I do all the cuts in the video because it's about building up in complexity. At first, I just start off with the, the simple. Trying to control it, trying to articulate as best as I can, relaxing, trying to keep on time and all the rest of that stuff. Transitions from this chord to... Now notice, I actually have that little slide mechanism going in there. Those types of articulations are essential to be a fluid guitar player. So if you're like, I'm not really doing the slide, I just gave you the JD Vance face. So, you know what I mean? There it is. You gotta organize your thoughts to be like, I gotta build up one brick at a time. I didn't do that for 25 years, and it really put me behind the 8 ball. But once you do, all of a sudden, you see geometric growth, right? It's just exponential because you don't lose the previous skills. That's what happens when you don't organize your thoughts. You forget about this other really important piece and you don't integrate because you haven't done it in a while. When you start building it from the ground up to be like, what is this chord? What is this one? What key am I playing in? How does that fit in? 3 notes per string. You're like, oh, look, Locrian position, Aeolian, or the natural minor, right? Or there's the pentatonic scale. Oh, gets juicy. Maybe it works. Maybe it's Maybelline. So on and so forth, but that's it, right? And then, of course, start building up the complexity instead of just doing, your standard power chord ideas, like this 5th here, this one here, and this triad. The extension there, which again is the 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And obviously 8 and 1 are the same, so I'm just adding the 2nd degree to this minor 3rd here. Again, the interval structure. And then the 5th. Right, so that note creates tension, which wants to resolve, so that gives me the classic 80s stuff. If I could play it. So I hope you understand that there's where the theory stuff starts to marry up with that common everyday. You're like sitting off there. You're like, it sounds much better like that than when you start necessarily right on the note, unless you meant to do that because it's artistic and that's a whole nother conversation. But you know what I mean? Start with the normal order of operations first before you get creative. And then branch out when you kind of be like, okay, I get the concept there. It's fine, right? So again, you're like, there's the 3rd degree, there's the 5th degree, there's the 1st degree. That's the 1st inversion, right? 2nd inversion. Roots. 1st inversion again of the major triad associated with, yes, A flat major here. From the E type chord, right? I'm just taking this 3rd here and moving it up onto the same string. Again, breaking down these ideas in terms of the theoretical background is way more important before you get going on, I have to work on the rhythm skills, because those create the roadmap and the inspiration for you to come up with the ideas. Now when I'm looking at it, I'm like, right? Like I have already an idea of what I can actually play there. So in this case, I can keep making new ideas over and over again over top of these backing tracks, and it's gonna sound great, whether I'm playing them modally or not, right? So you can see me sort of starting off with just the plagal cadence, and then it goes 4, 6, 1. You see me extend this 6 chord here with these 6th intervals. And then you see me do a whole section on 6. I do it up here, right here, of course. And I'm strumming, okay? The thing here is just to control the rest of the strings while you're strumming those 6ths or power chords or 4ths or 3rds, whatever the interval structure is on any of the 2 strings. Now, 6ths are particularly useful. They're a really cool dissonant sound that can be very, very useful in a lot of situations to differentiate your chord structure from millions of other songs. Adding a tiny bit of dissonance goes a long way to making your music sound sophisticated. So there you go. But you know what I mean? Working on the idea of 6 and moving around the diatonic scale structure of the A flat major scale in this case is going to be essential. You see me do lots of it. You see me kick it up again, now doing triad pairs like this one. The classic Stones, right? There's this one here. I'm trying to see. I can't see with the microphone. Right, there's that one. There's this guy. Right, the suspended sort of triad in that case. Again, down here. Okay, it's me connecting 2 together of the same type. There's the C type from Caged, right? These ones, A types. Then you're like E types, A type there, right? So you can see me attaching them all together on the same string. More rhythm work. Of course, after that, we get into, I think I do an arpeggio run there. For those, I've already done a lesson on it. It's basically ascending in a major 7 in groups of 4. Mixolydian. That's Lydian, Phrygian, Dorian, Ionian. That's how I know to play a major scale there. And the major chord and the major arpeggio, right? So that's why knowing where you are becomes so incredibly important. I would never be able to make that crazy run, you know, like... Doing that without actually knowing where you are in the sequence of notes is going to be incredibly challenging unless you have a super developed ear and you're like natural musician from hell. So most people ain't doing that. The way you do it is by mapping out those positions, and then in your mind, you're just moving through them by string set using the simple rule where you're like, okay, if I'm playing this... There's a pattern there, a sequence, right? And you just keep playing them. It's 2 strings, it's 3 strings, it's 4 strings, and so on and so forth. At the very end of the video, of course, I play basically scales as rhythm ideas, right? So now... I'm just doing it fast, right? And then same thing. Again, Mixolydian, Lydian, Phrygian, Dorian, Ionian. Okay, so again, knowing where you are is incredibly important for you to be able to chain these ideas together. That's step number 1. I don't care if you're playing the crazy licks or not. You're not playing the crazy licks until you're like, oh, look, I'm in the Ionian position. You know? It's just facts. I ignored that for decades. Don't make my dumb mistake, okay? And of course, just work on the rhythmic value. Now, listen, that stuff comes from a wide variety of music tastes, listening to Nuno Bettencourt and Van Halen and whoever your person is. I don't care who they are. If you want to do the lead stuff, like I just did, like any of the 80s guys and stuff, you have to listen to a whole bunch of different players like that and then listen to the music that you're going to solo over and then try to adapt those ideas over to the music so it suits, right? That's not an easy thing to do. They call it groove. And that's why, those guys in the 80s that got signed to the Masters, right? Like there's a certain swagger to XYZ if you listen to their music and Rat. It's beyond the sort of, oh, look, they just learned this. It comes from within, whatever you want to call that. So to get the sort of like, and get it right, like an Aerosmith vibe or something else, you have to practice and play their music to a certain degree or jam along with it is what I like to do, right? So I'm forced to kind of go, and adapt my playing style over and be like, should I be doing them all downstrokes or something else? I think people miss this part. I could show you the scale parts I just did. I'm borrowing all these ideas from the 3 notes per string and the pentatonics, right? So that there's no mystery here. That's where that stuff obviously comes from. It's just 3 notes per string or the pentatonic scale. In this case, the pentatonic scale starting off the root. Right? So you got to know where you are so you can be like, oh, okay, if I start the scale from there, that's Ionian, Dorian. Oh, there's Phrygian, Mixolydian, Aeolian. Back into Ionian again there, right? So those shapes and connecting them on the fretboard one right after another is going to give you the positions, if you will, to be able to now construct and utilize these really essential sort of chord ideas. When you're in the pentatonic here, you're down here, that lives there, that particular chord progression there, the A to the C. It's been used like a trillion times, right? So, but once you're like, oh, that happens in the minor pentatonic, it's like there should be a light bulb that goes off. So that's really the lesson is it's not so much, oh, play what I just played. No. Set a goal. Does your rhythm need work? Does your timing need work? Does your fretboard need work? What is it? Your technique? Pick that there and then develop an exercise that gets you to the next level. So if you're like, try to be like, and then accenting them. Continuous. It doesn't have to be the super psycho hard one. It has to be the next logical level that you're like, okay, I have proficiency. Now I can move on. Then you can be like, right? And you're like, I'm going to get this gallop in there now. And then so on and so forth until you're doing Disposable Heroes or whatever it is. So there's the lesson. I'm going to end it right there. I wish you guys all the luck. And again, go through all of those steps. Determine the key. 4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So there's me moving through the Lydian mode. I know you just want to punch me in the face right now, right through the internet, fist right through the whatever, the screen. Listen, don't shoot the messenger. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. Just get your nose to the grindstone. If you have to, write some of these ideas like, what did he just say in plain English? Write that down on the computer, sit there and look at it and try to understand it, pick up your instrument and then try to make that happen, whatever that is. Triad pairs. Start with something like that and be like, what's the most simplistic version of that? Moving from the 4 to the 5 chord? Okay, but using the cage system? Now you're cooking with gas. See you in the next one.